Welcome back to Celebrity Radio. It's Alex Belfield talking to some of the country's biggest stars, some of my favourite people and sporting legends too. They don't come any bigger than, well, one of England's most loved stars of football. Stuart Pearce, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. All good.
Do you know, big man, here I am sat in Nottingham. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of people who wish they could have this opportunity today. It's funny, isn't it? When you're a star of football and you hang around long enough, they just fall in love with you and they stick by you forever.
I think that sort of loyalty gets repaid by myself to certainly the connection I've had with football in general, but certainly in Nottingham. You know, I spent a long time there as a player and go back there on a regular basis, and I think it's a two-way street, that one.
I was thinking about the halcyon days when you were at your biggest. I mean, they were incredible times, weren't they? And especially if we look at 96 and around there. I mean, it was a bit like music in a way. When Chris Evans was on Radio 1 playing Oasis and Blur, it was just a beautiful time for football.
Yeah, it was. As I say, we were fortunate enough to play. I mean, Green Flag sponsored England at the time, actually. So it was an interesting time to play for England, and we were fortunate to have the likes of Paul Gascoigne in our ranks at the time, who was a world-class star.
Do you speak to him? I mean, I see him on the telly and I see him in the papers from time to time, and my heart bleeds because I interviewed him back in the day when he was this physical sort of genius that everybody loved. He could run that pitch as good as anyone else. Have you been in contact with him? Is he okay?
Last time I saw Paul was probably just over a year ago. He released a documentary and I went to the screening of it and done a Q&A with him afterwards, and he was in real good form at the time, and obviously I try to keep informed about how he's doing and whatever. You know, he's got a wonderful, warm-hearted individual, and as talent goes, he's probably the best we've ever had on these shores.
I should talk to you about mental health and football because people don't really discuss it, because you lads are so popular and you go out there to millions on the telly and in surrounded by 25, 30, 50, 100,000 people in a pitch. Do you think there needs to be a support network? Because you have this career and not everybody's blessed enough to continue after they're on the pitch. I mean, you had a career after that. And, you know, there aren't many Linekers out there who end up broadcasting. Do you think there should be some sort of safety net for people after football? Because you go from everything to nothing. It must be a bit like show business, really, having a number one career and then finding yourself working in Greggs.
Yeah, it's very difficult. You know, the high profileness of a lot of sports and a lot of individuals, entertainers, you name it. You're right. There is that situation where you're lauded one minute and the next minute there could be nothing there for you. I'm probably class myself very, very lucky that I come from quite a humble background, you know, as an electrician before going into the world of football and everything that throws at you. So, you know, I'd like to think that I've been very grounded through the whole process, you know. But I think there are charities that do a lot in regard to that, but I still feel as though a lot has to be done, because it is a big problem, I think, especially with social media this day and age, you know, and that is sort of will be and continually be a problem.
I don't know how you feel too. Thank God we weren't around at our biggest when Twitter was around, because there was a lot we could get away with. I mean, even when I used to do phone-ins, I think now the trolls out there, it was a different time. I mean, they can reach you, they do reach you. Are you grateful that you were able to have your career almost privately for 90 minutes once a week, opposed to being sort of discussed 24/7, 365 days a year?
Yeah, it's really interesting. As I say, I'm doing a little bit of work for Green Flag, and they've done sort of stats over the last 25 years about how motoring's changed over that time to what it is today. And the similar is true of football. They sponsored England at the time, and I spoke with Des Walker, a teammate of mine, 2 days ago it was, and we were just speaking about modern day football and whatever, and then he turned around to me and said, we were really lucky in our time, because we probably come in just after the time where there was no money in the game, you know, in the 60s and 70s. So we earned a reasonable living, but we also lived a lifestyle that was of the average man away from football, which, you know, I'm quite pleased. We probably had the perfect era in many ways.
I think so. What's also interesting about this thing that Green Flag have done is found research that more than half the people wish that they could go back to a time when a car was sort of driven by the person behind the wheel, because there's this new technology, isn't there, where they can park themselves and all of this, electricity-powered cars and things like that, self-park and all this stuff. But actually, more people would rather park the car themselves than press a button. And it's the same in life, really. We can almost be smart asses and too clever for our own good.
Yeah, I think so. I think with cars are quite personal things, though. You know, we like to personalise them. We like to give them names. My car has got a name at the moment. My first car was called Betsy Lou. You know, most of my cars that I've had through my life have had names, and we like to personalise our cars. So to actually hand over to technology or somebody else and not have that personal connection is a little bit alien to most people, but it will happen. And if it happens for safety's sake, all well and good.
We lost the line there for a second. I think you said something like you called your car Betsy Lou. I must have misheard you, Stuart.
No, you certainly didn't. Betsy Lou was my first car, my Austin Morris, in about 1979, I think it was.
Wow. How incredible. Have you been a big car guy? I mean, I look at the car parks now. I live here in Nottingham, and of course we've got County and Forest, and the gate sort of to the grounds are a bit like a theatre stage door. There's still fans wait there every day. Were you ever obsessed in the car that you drove into? Because, of course, the signing's still a huge thing as it was back then. The fans will always be fans.
I really, really shy away from anything that might sort of attract attention, if I'm being quite honest with you, and that's reflected definitely in the cars. This day and age in cars, because I do a lot of driving, I buy cars on being functional rather than flash. I'm not that way inclined. So as long as the proviso for me this day and age is wherever I park my car, anywhere in the country, if it gets scratched, I can come back to it and I'm not too fussed. I go to a lot of concerts in a lot of back streets, and wherever I park my car, I don't have to worry too much about whether it gets scratched or damaged or stolen or whatever, because I've not spent that much on a car.
Me too. I'd rather go on holiday. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
Talk to me about leaving football and what it was like to walk off the pitch for the final time. I'm fascinated by this when I speak to Olympians too, that there must be a period of mourning when this has been the obsession of your life for decades, and now suddenly you're just Stuart Pearce, not Stuart Pearce, the goalkeeper, the manager. I mean, it's got to be almost traumatic to walk away from it, because you loved it, didn't you? And you still do.
Yeah, exactly that. I love it and I still do. But the one thing I always knew and always said about it, I'm Stuart Pearce. People get attracted by the job title, not by me as a person. You know what I mean? And that is, you've got to understand that, you know, from the start, certainly to the finish, and as you go on and away from the game and the high profile of it. But I was very fortunate in some ways. I played the game professionally until I was 40 years old, and the day I retired was the day Kevin Keegan said to me, come and have a job with Manchester City on the coaching staff. So I never really had time to sort of mourn my sort of passing of a playing career. I had my eyes solely on a coaching and a managerial career, and I've always had the mentality in life that life doesn't owe you a living. You know, you can't just sit back and say, well, I achieved this or I achieved that yesterday. Life's all about today and tomorrow. That's the only thing that matters.
I love that. The entitlement of the new generation of stars, whether they're on the pitch or off, is extraordinary, isn't it? They almost feel like they're entitled to start at 300,000 a week.
Well, the sad thing is you'll soon fall on your backside if that's your mentality, you know. And as I say, people love a trier, and that's probably what I've been over my lifetime.
I produced a phone-in with Larry Lloyd in Nottingham for a long time on Century, and talking to him was so fascinating because, again, a megastar in his day, but was never paid megastar money. What's your take on that? Are they paid too much today, or were you paid too little?
I think I was paid the going rate, personally. I think, you know, in the era that I played football, I think all the clubs that I played at paid me the going rate, and I was more than happy with what I got paid at the time. Yes, I could have left some of the clubs I worked for, namely Nottingham Forest, and earned more money elsewhere, but my personal happiness was more important than potentially more a larger paycheck, if you like, you know. But that's just the way I am in comparison to others, potentially, and loyalty to the brand and the supporters weighed heavily on me as well. So, but certainly Larry's era, for what Larry achieved in winning European Cups and whatever, he was certainly vastly underpaid, as were a large swathe of footballers, prior to sort of, let's say, 1980 or the mid-80s, I would say.
And then we look at you today. You always seem to keep it classy. You never got involved in shenanigans. You kept out the way. Was that deliberate? You wanted to be defined as the manager, as the football player, opposed to the guy falling out of clubs. You're living the rock star lifestyle, but if you get known for that, it can destroy your reputation on the pitch. Were you always aware of that? Because so many aren't.
I would always go and rather see a live band play and then slide home, or go to, if I'm going to go out somewhere to see friends, go somewhere that's a bit more understated. But that's just me as a person, it's not, I always knew where the line was basically between, I had to work harder than most to earn a living in the game, I always felt, because of the upbringing I come from. I got there not through natural ability, through sheer hard work, determination and pig-headedness.
What was the year, if you could live again? Was it 91 with the cup final? What was the year that you just couldn't believe your eyes and what was happening around you?
Probably 90 to 91. In that season, if you like, I'd just come back from a World Cup, which was my first major tournament for England. I scored 16 goals playing as a left back, no penalties for Forest. We got to the FA Cup final, and probably more importantly for me, that was the best football I ever played in my lifetime.
We're talking today about this Green Flag campaign, and they're 25 years old. When you look back 25 years, is it a bit like watching your grandson on the telly? Do you still watch those old clips? Because they are magical. They're almost shot differently to today. It's sort of the halcyon days of TV in a way. It was so big and so special. Do you ever look back on these matches and relive them?
When I do come across a game, if you like, I look at it and think, wow, look how dated that was. And it only seems like yesterday to me, but it looks ridiculously dated on television. But as I said, the most important thing is tomorrow rather than yesterday. Yesterday takes care of itself. Tomorrow is the important thing. You're defined by what you've done yesterday, but it's more important that you have an eye on tomorrow.
I get that, but you are aware of the love for you across the places in which you played, because the fans that you had as kids are now probably middle-aged men who've got kids of their own, if not grandkids. This legacy lives on. Yeah,
we all create memories for the next generation, if you like, and I've got memories of watching the likes of Gordon Banks, who inspired me to want to be a goalkeeper when I was a kid, and David Webb playing for Queen's Park Rangers, who inspired me to be a goalkeeper. And everyone's got somebody, or Johnny Rotten that inspires you, or the Stranglers that inspire you in music, whatever it may be in your life. But it's nice sometimes when I do bump into people and they turn around and say, look, we've named our son after you, or whatever. I used to come to Forest and watch, and it was fantastic watching you and the team play in those days. And it's nice to create those memories for people.
You mentioned the Stranglers there and the Lurkers and people like this that you love very much. Is music now your biggest passion, possibly more than sport?
I think it always has been. I've
really?
been to a lot of concerts.
Did you secretly want to be a guitarist, not a footballer? Is that what you're telling me? Drummer? Really?
Yeah, I've probably always saw myself as a drummer, to be fair. That's been a big one. I've recently got into rugby league as well. Warrington Wolves, we're in the Challenge Cup final this weekend, so I'll be there supporting them. That's become quite a big love over the last probably 10, 12 years.
Talk to me about getting sacked. I've been sacked from every job I've done. This won't surprise you, having heard the quality of this interview, but it's never nice. But it seems to be so vitriolic in sport, and especially football. When that headline comes on, manager sacked today, replaced immediately by somebody better. I wonder whether this is sort of old-fashioned too, because there's an element of bullying in it. How does that feel when you either have to sack someone or you're sacked yourself?
It's never sat comfortably with me to actually, as the boss, to lay people off or say, look, I'm going in a different route, which I've had to do on several occasions with players, with staff members. I always like to do that face to face and personally. I would never let anyone do my dirty work. I would always explain my reasoning behind it. In regard to myself being sacked, first time I was ever sacked was from Manchester City, and you think when you walk down a high street, everyone's looking at you, pointing, thinking there's the fella who got sacked yesterday, when in reality no one really cares too much. I had a great leveller. The day after I got sacked, I went and watched an England under-19s game. I was sat there feeling a bit sorry for myself, and just having a cup of tea before the game, Tony Pulis walked along, booted me, looked at me, and then said, "You've not lived until you've had 3 good sackings." And he was probably absolutely right, and it just grounded me. It made me laugh. Tony's a top man who's been around the game a long, long time. And no matter what age you are, as whatever, if someone decides again in a different direction, so be it. Don't take it personally. Move it on. Use it to make you stronger as an individual.
And your life today, Stuart, are you still obsessed with fitness and health and eating and diet and all that, or do you now just enjoy yourself and go and have a beer at the back of the band?
I don't drink. I stopped drinking when I went into coaching and management. So I haven't had a drink for 15 years, just because, all the things that you said, everyone's got a camera phone these days and whatever. And I just prefer to live my life in that manner. My diet has slipped a little bit since I was a player. I was very professional. And then you end up travelling late to games and whatever. You're stopping at service stations and one thing and another. So the diet slipped slightly, but I still try to do a little bit of physical work.
In show business, there's Sinatra, there's Silla, there's people like that. In sport, there's Gazza, there's Lineker, and there's Stuart Pearce, who people love, certainly from my generation. Congratulations on a wonderful life and career, and we look forward to seeing what's next. When will we see you next? I mean, what is your plan now, just to enjoy life?
Well, I've got so much on at the moment, to be fair. I work regularly for TalkSport doing the commentaries for Premier League game, England Champions League. So I do cover all of those. I do leadership, motivational speaking. I go into companies, which I really enjoy that challenge and helping others in respect to that. Working today for Green Flag. Every day's sort of different in McCallum. I've got no 2 weeks the same. I go into Portsmouth, do a little bit of coaching there when I get time availability. So every day's slightly different. I was on a cruise last week coaching kids on a boat, and speaking.
Amazing.
At one of their function halls. So every day's different, and I quite enjoy that.
Congratulations on everything. Happy birthday to Green Flag. You can find out more by Googling Green Flag and find out about this 25 years on the road. And Stuart Pearce, you're a class act. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. No problems. Have a good day.